Hello, my dear students. Welcome to another session of Appreciating Prose. Today, we are starting with Albert Camus. We have to study about Albert Camus' Nobel acceptance speech. Today, we will go for an introduction about Albert Camus and his philosophy of absurdism.
Albert Camus was a French Algerian writer who is best known for his absurdism, and he is known for his absurdist works including The Stranger and The Plague. These are novels written by Camus. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1957. He was a Nobel laureate. He was born on November 7, 1913 in French Algeria. Algeria was a colony of France. It is in North Africa and it got independence in 1962. He was born in 1913. Camus' father died in a combat during First World War. And after that, he lived with his mother who was partially deaf. So his childhood was not so happy. He suffered many traumatic events in his childhood. Or he witnessed many traumatic situations in his childhood. He did very well in school and he was admitted to the University of Algiers, and from where he studied philosophy. Camus became so political during his student years and he joined Communist Party and then in Algerian People's Party. He also opposed French colonization and he argued for Algerian empowerment of Algeria. He argued for the empowerment of Algeria. Albert Camus, he said that you will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You cannot search for happiness. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. If you're thinking about the meaning of life, you may not get the meaning because life is absurd. There is only one truth in life, that the death is the ultimate truth. We're approaching death day by day. Then what is the meaning of our life? Asked Albert Camus.
Camus came to France at the age of 25. His major works are The Outsider, The Plague, The Fall, his philosophical essays, The Myth of Sisyphus, The Rebel, The Stranger, and his several stage plays that includes Caligula, which is a major work in the theatre of the absurd. And all his works examine the alienation or the separation or the detachment that is inherent in the modern life of human beings. And he is known for his absurdist philosophy. And told you it was a poverty-stricken childhood of Camus. His memories of war and his experiences under Nazi occupation filled his novels and essays. His debut novel, that is The Stranger, which was published in 1942, and the essay Myth of Sisyphus, it brought him fame and he became a major figure in post-war French intellectual life. His philosophy of absurdism was exemplified in the essay The Myth of Sisyphus, which was published in 1942. And coming towards the story of Sisyphus, Sisyphus was a figure in Greek mythology. He was also the founder of Ephria, the first ruler of Ephria. He was a clever man, but he was also a wicked man, full of greed and deceit. He took pleasure in killing travelers and he took pleasure in killing guests who came to Ephria. And he violated the laws of hospitality. He angered all the gods by tricking them. and he also escaped death twice. He escaped death 2 times, and he was finally brought to the underworld. And there, Zeus, who is god of gods, castigated him. And he was also given a retribution. It was a lifetime, a never ending, pointless task was given to him, a punishment for promoting himself as being so powerful. The punishment was that he had to push up a heavy rock over a mountain and watch it roll down. And he has to repeat the same process over and over. We have a similar figure in our folk tales also. നാറാണത്ത് ഭ്രാന്തൻ്റെ കഥ നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും കേട്ടിട്ടുള്ളതല്ലേ. Camus says that we are like Sisyphus in the Greek figure who was punished by gods to roll a boulder up a mountain and watch it fall back down and down, down and down. Why he's saying like that? Our life is also a meaningless thing. Our life is absurd. We are just living our life for no meaning. There is no meaning to our life. We are just living in this life. We are only anticipating our death. We are anticipating a good future ahead in our life. We are studying tomorrow because we believe that tomorrow we may get good jobs. We may be settled in our life, a happy family. We may be foreseeing that. But only thing is sure in our life is our death. We have to anticipate, or we can only wait for our death, which is ultimately true in our life. It is the ultimate truth in our life. Actually, what we are living for, we are living only to embrace death. Is it meaningless thing? Is this something meaningless? Is it absurd? That's what he says, Camus says. Absurdism. He exemplified absurdism in his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. He says that all our lives are absurd, but he also resists the utter hopelessness. He says that we have to live our life with the knowledge that our life is meaningless, but we should endure it. Camus defined absurd as the futility of a search for meaning in an incomprehensible universe devoid of God or meaning. It is really absurd to search for the meaning of life, because life is irrational, life is meaningless. We are living our life only to embrace death. Only thing of sure in your life is death, that we have to face our death in our life. That is the sure thing. Nothing is sure in our life except the death. And he says that life is absurd, life is irrational. And you have to acknowledge this absurd background to our existence. Life is irrational. There is no way to search, there is no point in search for the meaning of life, and then triumph over the constant possibility of hopelessness in our life. Absurdism arises out of the tension between our desire for meaning and happiness. There is no meaning in our life. We are just living our life. If you are thinking in a religious manner, yes, there is a meaning in our life, because many of us believe that we have a living after our death. We have a life after our death. And he speaks in a point which is against the religious institutions, religious establishments. Life is absurd, life is irrational, life has no meaning. We are only living in this world now, and there is no afterlife. That's why he's saying life is meaningless, life is irrational. We are just living in the life. Don't go and search for the meaning of life. You cannot find the meaning of life. And on the other hand, absurdism also, it is the indifferent natural universe refusal to provide the meaning towards life. And in the essay Myth of Sisyphus, he also ask certain questions. Is life worth living? Is suicide a legitimate response if life has no meaning? He's posting certain questions. And he also compares humankind's longing for order and meaning to the Greek mythological hero Sisyphus. People are longing for meaning in a life, or people are longing for an order in the life. And he compares the people's longing for meaning to Sisyphus' act of rolling a boulder up a mountain only to have it fall to the bottom. He compares human life's longing for the meaning towards Sisyphus' action. He says it is similar to Sisyphus' action. In his essay, he says that, like Sisyphus, we continue to ask about the meaning of life. But life is absurd. You cannot find a meaning towards life. The philosopher says that we should embrace the absurdity of human existence. We should accept it. We should accept the absence of hope in our life. You should accept your present situation. And you have to take on the purpose of creating value and meaning towards life. Even though it is absurd, even though life is absurd, you have to accept its absurdity. You have to accept the total hopelessness in your life. And he says that suicide is not an appropriate response to it. Even despair is not the appropriate response to it. But the appropriate responses are the efforts, your constant effort in your life, and also the resilience, that the capacity to recover from all the difficulties and tough situations. The efforts and the resilience are the appropriate responses towards absurdism. Camus also says that, or he argues that, Sisyphus in the Greek mythology is happy and he endured his fate, and we must imitate, or we must emulate his resilience, his capacity to overcome the difficult situations, to accept the situations, and we must emulate his resilience. He continues that Greek hero Sisyphus is admirable because he accepts this task, because he accepts the pointlessness of his action. But he is not renouncing, he is not giving up, or he is not committing suicide, but he continues his task forever, rolling the boulder up the mountain only to see his falling down. He has risen above his fate, and his work continues. Life is like that, like this only. Life is absurd, but you have to accept this absurdism. You have to continue the life. Many people fight with the idea of suicide because they believe the world doesn't hold any meaning to them. But Camus proceeds to compare our actions to that of Sisyphus, which is meaningless. But he's an optimist. He believes that world is an absurd place. We are living our life for the hope for tomorrow, but tomorrow brings us closer to death. The absurdity also increases. The irrationality of the life also increases when we try to explain the world in rational words, but because the ultimate end is our death. The world itself is unreasonable, senseless, meaningless. But he rejects suicide as an option also, because it would mean the end of absurdity. Life is absurd. You cannot search for the meaning of life. You will not get a meaning in our life. He asks not to accept the absurd, but you have to be aware of it. You have to accept the total absence of hope in your life. You have to be aware of this. You have to be conscious of this. He says that. He argues that. He also maintains Sisyphus is being so happy or being happy despite his condition. He accepted the fate assigned to him. Camus wanted the people to imagine Sisyphus as happy so that we can face the absurdity of our life. You can acknowledge the absurdity of the life. You can overcome the absurdity of life. And you can thrive towards some kind of happiness in your life. Or you may find happiness in your life. And these things, the ideas, he put forward in the book The Myth of Sisyphus. It's a very famous book. And he is the second youngest recipient in history of Nobel Prize. He is the first African to receive the Nobel. And Nobel was given for his important literary production, which with clear-sighted earnestness illuminates the problems of the human conscience in our times. Albert Camus, one of the France's greatest cultural icon, and told you he died at the age of 46 prematurely in a car accident on his way to Paris with an unfinished autobiographical novel, The First Man. So I think you got an overall idea about Albert Camus, his theory of absurdism. So in the next class, we will start with his speech, Nobel Prize acceptance speech, which he delivered at the Nobel banquet at the City Hall in Stockholm, December 10th, 1957. So happy learning. Thank you.